included, it had to do with some of the things that are really important in recovery, one of which is staying connected to people. And I think there were 17 different apps. So I cut it down to 10, and I really tried to hone it in on things that are likely to be helpful to people in the digital media sync audience. So I'm going to share my screen now, Giulia. Let's see. Select window. We'll do entire screen. And now I got my slideshow going.
Yay. All right. That's good.
Okay, great. So first, my business is Higher Power Coaching and Consulting. I'm the founder. I have my contact information there. I'll put it up again later. But why do you care about what I think are the top apps to keep life manageable? So I want to tell you a little bit about my life. One, I'm in two 12-step recovery programs. I personally dedicate about 10 hours a week to my 12-step work. Some of that is meetings. Much of that is what we call service. So I volunteer to give time to other people to help them in recovery, which helps me. It's actually part of the program to help other people. I have a very consistent self-care practice. I pray, I meditate, and I exercise every single day. Some of those things multiple times a day. It's one of the things I learned in recovery is to take very good care of myself. That's one of the reasons why I'm able to do all the things that I do. I am in a wonderful, committed relationship. I see my partner all the time. We spend a lot of quality time together. I'm the founder of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting. I'll tell you in a moment more about what kinds of things I do. I do a weekly podcast, Fragmented to Whole Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. I've just done episode 73. So for the last 73 weeks, I have done a podcast. They're each 20 minutes or less, and they're on a variety of topics that can be helpful to people, whether they're in recovery or not. So one of the things I learned in recovery was a whole bunch of tools that I didn't learn anywhere else. So I was in therapy for 37 years. I read a gajillion self-help books, did workshops, workbooks, retreats, etc. And when I got into recovery, I got this whole, I call it a tool shed, not even a toolkit, a tool shed. And so I share a lot of that stuff. And I've done it weekly for 73 weeks. I publish bi-weekly on medium.com. So what I've been doing is taking my content from my podcast and turning it into written form. And I set aside an hour every day, Monday through Friday, to write. I'm also the community manager at Known, as Giulia mentioned earlier. And when we went to the virtual world, when we had to shut down for quarantine, I started working primarily on the virtual programs, and I host the weekly program, which is now going to be called Connection Corner, as Giulia mentioned. And I want to give another plug for this Thursday at 10. I have Amy from the Virtual Reality Truck New England. And since I met her at a networking event, I was like, that is so cool. More people need to know about that. So I'm totally stoked that she's going to be on the show. She's going to talk not only about virtual reality and gaming and her business, but also like how they came to start this particular business, which is really kind of a cool story. And then in addition to that, I'm the community engagement manager on a project at Yale that's called Innovation to Impact. So that project is funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and it is funding to teach entrepreneurial principles to substance use researchers. So people who are either doing prevention or treatment of substance use. This is to help them get their ventures to market quicker. Now, just to give a little plug for my business, Higher Power Coaching and Consulting, I provide services to those who need help with forming healthy boundaries. This is because before recovery, I really didn't have boundaries. I've learned to have really great boundaries, and I know how to help people have that. I work with people who need to build emotional resilience. So this could be like you have feelings all over the place and you don't know what to do with them, or you could have like this big old bundle of feelings and you don't know the difference between different things, and I help you pull that apart. A lot of people that I work with absolutely hate themselves. I'm here to tell you it is possible to move from self-hate to self-love, and I can help you with that. I also work with spiritual seekers who want a closer relationship with their higher power. So I was a spiritual person before I came into recovery, but my spiritual life was nothing like it is now, and I can help you with that. And then anybody that's in any kind of 12-step recovery program of any kind, it doesn't matter what, if you want to bring your recovery to another level, I can help with that. So if that's you or someone you know, please reach out to me. So now we're going to go into my top 10 apps, but I wanted to give you a snapshot of my calendar from last week so you can see kind of what my life looks like. And some people, like my sweetheart, actually, he looks at this and he goes, ah, it scares the crap out of him to see that. But it's my calendar and it works for me. But I wanted to give you a snapshot of that so you can see sort of how I construct my life. Some of these things are social, some of them are not, but I'm going to refer back to it a couple times. So the apps that I'm going to share with you are not necessarily in order of preference, except for the first one. So I am a Google user, I am an Android user, I am a PC user. So if you're a Mac or an iPhone or whatever user, some of the apps I'll talk about, you absolutely have access to. Some of them you will have comparable ones in your, in your world. So Google Calendar is,
Whoops.
what was that?
I said thank you for making that distinction.
Yeah. Okay. You're welcome. I'm glad I actually heard what you said. All right. So the calendar is really important to me. So I mentioned earlier, I didn't really have good boundaries before recovery, and time is one of the ways in which I really sort of enforce my boundaries. It's a way that I have boundaries for myself. I was always a scheduler before that, but I really use time well, and you'll hear some of what I mean by that as I go along here. So one of the things I do with my calendar is I schedule important things first. So recovery comes first for me. So my meetings and my service appointments go in my calendar first. Another example is I mentioned I write an hour a day, Monday through Friday. And so I schedule that 1 hour a day every single week. The other thing I want to say about the writing is I take 2 weeks and I work on a piece, and that second Friday, it doesn't matter what state it's in, I publish it. Because the thing about writing is you could potentially edit forever. So that's another boundary that I've set for myself. I'm like, I'm publishing it the second Friday. I've learned that done is better than perfect and not done. And I heard somebody say one time, aim for B- work, which was not something I would have been able to do before recovery. But I'd rather get stuff done on a regular basis because good content is important, but consistent content is also really important. So I'm going to move off from that. I could talk for a long time on that. So I also set up recurring events. So if I have something that's weekly, I set it up as a weekly recurring event. I also like to color code things. I have always done this. I probably own, I don't know, 8 different colors of highlighter. It just works for me and the way that my brain works. So I know that all my recovery stuff is in yellow. All of my known stuff is in charcoal gray. My coaching and consulting is in green, that sort of thing. I also put to-do items in my calendar. So I do have a to-do list that is separate, but if I have something that I have to get done this week, then I schedule it as an appointment in my calendar with me. And I schedule things around that. So that's important to me. So it goes in my calendar. And what I love, love, love about Google Calendar is that it syncs across all my devices. So I can go to my tablet, I can go to my phone, I can go to my computer. I could go to your computer and log into my Google Calendar if I wanted to. So I absolutely love that. The next one is the clock. So I mentioned time is a really important boundary for me. I use the clock for the alarm, for the clock for sure, for timers, and also for a stopwatch. The thing I used it most for is for daily and weekly alarms. I have to take a medication at 8:30 in the morning and 8:30 at night, so I have an alarm that goes off. And the reason I use this as opposed to something else is that the alarm goes off even when my phone is silenced because I need to be reminded to take the medication at a regular time. I talk to sponsees and a sponsor every single week, so I have an alarm that goes off weekly 5 minutes before I'm supposed to talk to them. And that way, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I've gotten lost track of my time, I know I've got 5 minutes until I get on that phone call. I also set timers for various activities for myself. So before quarantine, I would regularly go out and meet people for coffee, and I would allot an hour for that. So I would set a timer for 55 minutes. And I did that because if I didn't, I would be worried about time and I would be kind of distracted. So when I set the timer, I can pay complete attention to the person and to the conversation. And I would tell them, hey, I set a 5-minute warning. And that way we've got 5 minutes to wrap up the conversation before I need to go. And then I use a stopwatch to time myself. So, for example, how long is this podcast? If I feel like this is a little bit longer than it normally is, I'll do the stopwatch. So, the clock is really an important app for me. And then, of course, there's communication apps. This is really incredibly important. I'm sure most people understand this, but I just want to talk to you about how I use them. So, I use Gmail for my personal email as well as my higher power email. I use Outlook for both my known and Yale projects, and both of these sync across all devices, which I love. I'm a huge fan of being able to take my phone with me and being able to handle email from the phone if I like, or using it on my tablet or using it on the laptop. I use my text messaging for personal communications or quick professional messages. And I should say, actually, quick messaging for most people. If somebody sends me a text message this long, I ask them, can you please email that to me? Because it's my experience and understanding that most people's expectation of texting is that it be pretty quick. And I'm actually going to call out Juan from Known Here. When we first started working together, he would text me on a regular basis. And often it was things I needed to remember to do, but I'm in the middle of all these different things because, as you can see, I have a full calendar. And so I want to remember them. So I had to say to him 4 or 5 times, can you please email things like this to me so that I don't let them go? Because I can't stop what I'm doing right now and act on that, and I don't want to forget it. And so we have to teach people how to communicate with us. And that's why I put that bullet there, because I wanted to make sure that I remember that. And then I have a couple of people I talk to on a regular basis who are in Canada, and I use the WhatsApp app for that to make calls because it doesn't cost anything. I once talked to somebody in Canada and the call was, I don't know, some outrageous like $90 or something like that. And a friend was like, why aren't you using WhatsApp? And I didn't even know that it existed. So WhatsApp is great for international calls. All right, people might think, why is this even on your list? Well, I'll tell you, my built-in keyboard app on my phone was annoying. At this point, I don't even remember what was annoying about it, but I'm here to tell you, you don't have to be annoyed. I don't care if it's an app that's annoying you or something else in your life, there's probably an app for that. And I just want to give a plug for the Bitmoji app. That's what this image is from. If you don't know Bitmoji, you can download it. You take a picture of yourself and you create an avatar of yourself, which I think is so cool. And then it has all these different images that you can send with it. But my point here is that I was really annoyed by the keyboard that was built in. And I use my phone all the time. I need to not be annoyed. So I found an app that actually works for me. So my point here isn't so much download the Swiftkey Keyboard app. It's if something is annoying you, there's probably an app for that. And if it's the keyboard, there's definitely an app for that. The next one is the Tasks app. I love this one for to-do items. So this is if you have a one-time thing or anything that you want to make sure that you check off. So this is different than the alarm on the clock because I want to make sure that I actually check something off. So here's what I use it for. I have an alarm that goes off at 1:45 every afternoon to remind me to pray. This is part of making conscious contact with my higher power, which I do at the beginning and the end and the middle of the day. And there are many times that at that time, it is not appropriate. I don't have the time and space to do that, but I want to make sure I do it. So what appears in the upper left corner of my phone is a little check mark, and it doesn't go away until I check it off. I also have this in my phone to make sure that I write every day. So at 5 o'clock, if I haven't written, I get a reminder that I need to write. That basically never happens, but that's how important it is to me. And then the other thing is that I had meditated for a long time and I kind of fell off, and I've just started again I'm at 7 weeks or something like that. But I have a reminder at 10 p.m. every night. If I haven't meditated, I need to do that now. And I leave the check mark there. So I love this one. I used to have another to-do app, which I actually think was called To Do, and it didn't work half the time. So I was annoyed. So I got a new app. All right. This one I'm going to gush a little bit about. And at this point, I'm sure just about everybody knows about Dropbox, or they have other cloud-based apps. Well, I can tell you the minute that I learned about Dropbox, I was listening to the Faith Middleton radio show. She was interviewing some tech person. I don't know who it was. And she said, well, let's close out the show with something like, what's your favorite thing? And he mentioned Dropbox, talked about it being in the cloud and how it worked. I literally pulled over on the side of the road, wrote it down, went home and downloaded it. This may have been before smartphones, but it was definitely before I had a smartphone. So what I did at the time was I would email documents back and forth between work and home to myself. And it was crazy making. And I was like, oh my God, I can have this way of, like, I think of it like as having a hard drive like out there in the clouds. And what I love about it is that I can have access to my things 24/7 anywhere in the world that has internet access. I have the app on my phone, on my tablet, on my laptop, but I could also go to the library and log into my Dropbox account and access my files if I wanted to. The app is free, but they also have paid upgrades. I know when I first started using it, the way it worked was if you shared it with other people and they signed up for it, they and me got more free space. So I actually have a ton of free space because I shared it with everybody. And it syncs across devices, and you can use it as an app or you can use it online. I use this all the time. I have all my files with me everywhere I go. I can't tell you how frequently I'm picking up the phone and emailing somebody a document because I have access to it on my, on my phone where I am with me. So somebody will be like, hey, do you have the flyer for that event on, September 12th? And I'm like, actually, I do. And I can email it to them immediately. So I just cannot say enough about Dropbox. I'm sure there are plenty of other cloud-based apps that people are using nowadays, but that's how I use it. This is a new one for me, Google Keep. So this is where I keep my to-do things. I just recently read about it. It's been there for quite some time, but I love this. It provides a notes function in the Google Suite, and I have a feeling I'm using just the tip of the iceberg of this. What I love about it is that it syncs across devices. So I used to use the Notes app on my phone, but I was always aware the whole time, if something happens to my phone, these notes are all gone. So I've started using Google Keep. It has hashtag capability, so you can hashtag different items so that you can search and find them like that. It also has color coding capability. And what I use it for is I have a variety of to-do lists. So I have my personal to-do list, I have my higher power to-do list, and I have my website to-do list. Those are in green. Then I have hashtags that I use on a regular basis so that I can just copy and paste them from the note into Instagram. And I have those color coded in yellow. And I am really loving this. So it's an app that's on my phone. It also works as a sidebar in any of the Google Suite programs, but you can open it up so that it's in its own window as well. So it's incredibly versatile. And I've really just kind of started using it. And I feel like I'm using the tip of the iceberg. But if you don't know about this and you're a Google user, you're going to want to look into this. The next one is Venmo. I'm a huge fan of Venmo. The way that I got started with Venmo is I had gone to a conference with a colleague who was much younger than me. And I don't know what happened, but for some reason, she ended up owing me $5. And she said, I don't deal with cash. If you want money from me, you have to download the Venmo app so I can pay you. And I was like, what is this? So I downloaded it and I got the $5 from her. And I probably didn't use it for 2 years. And now I use it all the time. In fact, this is how my clients pay me. So if you don't know about it, some people call this a digital wallet. I think of it as a no cash way to exchange funds with friends. Venmo is now to the point where they're starting to be able to be accepted for certain online vendors. You do have to connect it to your bank, so you have to be comfortable doing that. It is free to use. However, if you want to not wait 2 or 3 days for the money to be transferred and you want it to be done quickly, you can pay them a fee. So the way they make their money is either through these fees, or I'm guessing by holding on to your money for a couple of days is really how they do it. One of the things I really like about it also is that I get a monthly statement. So that for my business, that works out great because I have, I list out like, why I'm doing something and who the transaction in and whether the money came in or went out and what the date was and all that sort of thing. So I love this because, you go out for coffee with someone or you have lunch with someone and they're like, oh, I don't have any cash, then you can Venmo the money back and forth to them. And I know there's a few other apps like that out there, but I highly recommend it. It's really changed things for me. All right, here's another one. I'm going to gush about this. So it's called You Need a Budget, affectionately YNAB. I heard about this. I was in a 12-step meeting and there was a woman talking about how she had transformed her financial life because of this app she was using. And I was like, after the meeting, what is the name of that app? So I downloaded it about a year and a half ago. The way this company talks about themselves is they say, we are a financial education company who keeps the lights on by selling an app. You do not have to buy their app. You can still use all of their principles and their information, but why wouldn't you buy their app? It's $84 a year, which breaks down to about $7 a month. You do pay it annually. You can try it first for 34 days for free. And I love that they do that 34 days because that means that you bridge over 2 different months of budgeting time. So you can really get a feel for what it's like. Now, I am someone who transformed my financial life years ago. In 1999, when my student loans came due, I declared bankruptcy because I had racked up so much credit card debt before then that I just couldn't handle the student loans on top of the credit card debt. I transformed my life financially to the point where by 2008, 9 years later, I was able to buy a home. So obviously, I cleaned things up massively and I changed a lot of things. I got a financial advisor. And I would say that I have been really good at the big picture financial stuff for a long time. But when it came to the everyday stuff, I'd go back and forth between I'm burying my head in the sand, I'm paying attention. I'm burying my head in the sand, I'm paying attention. And I always had this kind of tension about money. But I made sure that I was always like reading blogs and articles and books and stuff and keeping finances in the front of my mind because it was such a shit show for me before I changed over my financial life. And I have never seen anything like this. I can tell you that as a result of using YNAB, I have more money in the bank than I have ever had in my entire life, including my emergency fund, 3 vacation funds, next month's mortgage payment already. And there's a lot that goes into it, but it mainly has to do with the fact that it used to be I thought of my money as like money. And now I think of it in categories. Even though I had a budget before and I would see a financial advisor yearly, and inevitably, here's what would happen. He'd go, you're spending too much on dining out. And I'd be like, yeah, I know, I'm spending too much on dining out. So maybe for a month or so, I'd try to watch that. I didn't do anything to keep track of it. And then next thing I know, I'm doing it again. And so it was just like this big pool of money for me. And the way that they have things set up is I have my money in categories. I'm looking at it in my app. And let's say I go, okay, I'm going to go dining out. And I don't really have, say I have $20 in there. So I have some options. I can either only spend $20, I can not go, or here's the magic for me. I have to consciously choose to pull that money away from something else to put it into dining out. And I'm just using dining out as an example here because I'm sure that's something that a lot of people have problems with. So it's that conscious choice of where I'm pulling it from. Because before it was just money and now it's not. So no matter how you like to take in information, they have a way to deliver it to you. So they have videos, they have a podcast, they have blogs. They also have free weekly webinars to teach you how to use the program and to teach you how to think. about your money in ways that are different. And they use these 4 rules that I have listed here on the screen. I'm not going to go into them because that's not my job. And by the way, I'm not getting anything for this. I'm not affiliate marketing. I just love this company because they really approach finances in a way that is approachable to everyday people. So for example, their videos, they're usually hilarious. They also talk about things that regular everyday people talk about. So for example, when quarantine hit and a lot of people wanted to start going to the grocery store as infrequently as possible, they had somebody who's been grocery shopping for her entire family on a monthly basis for years do a whole blog on here's what I do and how I think about and how I preserve my vegetables and all this kind of stuff. They, about a month ago, they did this series where they profiled if the 4 major characters from Seinfeld had a why you need a budget, what would the categories in their budget be? And it was really hilarious. Like gum is one of the categories for Jerry and that sort of thing. And they would have diner, like all of them would have diner in there. And it's a really, they use things like that as teaching tools to show people there's all different kinds of ways. And they profile regular everyday people and the problems they have with their finances and how their system can tackle it. So I just cannot say enough good things about YNAB. And then number 10 is Lastpass. So this is a password manager. I've been using it for years. For years before that, I knew I needed a password manager. Because we're all doing everything online nowadays, it's really important that we have strong passwords and that we keep them in a place that is not easily accessible. So not in a document on Dropbox called password, which is what I used to do. When I first started using it, I used the free version. And then at the time, I think it was $12 a year. That's $1 a month to keep everything of mine safe. Now it's $36 a year. So I happen to use Firefox as my most common browser. And so this is an extension of Firefox. So when I log into a site, I can invoke LastPass to plop in my password, but I have to actually do something to do that. I could make it remember them, but that seems a little crazy to me. It syncs across platforms, so I do have the app here. It doesn't, I have to copy and paste the password out of the LastPass app into something on my phone. Not only does it secure your passwords, but it also will generate password for you. So let's say I'm on a site that says it's time for you to renew your password. I can generate one, or I sign up on a new site, I can generate one, and I can tell it needs to be X number of characters. I want letters, I want numbers, I want special characters. So I can't recommend this enough. If you are not securing your passwords, if you have a document with your passwords in it that is not secure, unless it's a piece of paper that you have at home, but then you have to worry about what happens to the piece of paper. So can't recommend that enough. And then I have one more bonus, which isn't really, I lied. I have a bonus, but it's coming after this. So just to recap, the top 10 apps that I use to make my life manageable: Google Calendar. And again, if you're not in the Google Android PC world, I'm sure that there's a comparable calendar in the Mac world. I use the clock often for the alarms, for the timer and the stopwatch. And of course, my communications apps. I use the Microsoft Swiftkey keyboard because my keyboard annoyed me. And just remember, if something's annoying you, there's probably an app for that. I love the Tasks app as my to-do app because it requires me to check something off to complete it. Dropbox, fantastic for cloud storage. Google Keep, I really love it. It's a notes app that syncs across devices. Venmo is a great way to be able to exchange money with people without actually exchanging cash. YNAB, you need a budget, you need a budget. I'm here to tell you, I have never had such a feeling of relief, satisfaction, and control over my finances as I have for the last year and a half if I've been using it. You should at least try it. It's a free trial for 34 days. and then LastPass, which is the password manager. So one last thing I want to share is that, like all my colleagues that know that I do this. So I use the Pomodoro technique. I happen to use a website that's called Kanban Flow, and I really just use the tip of the iceberg for that, which is that I use the Pomodoro technique, which is built into that. So this is a technique for efficiency and productivity. And it's named the Pomodoro technique because the person that developed it had a timer that looks very much like the one on the screen that was the shape of a Pomodoro tomato. And the way it works is you work in 25-minute segments, you take a 5-minute break, and then you work another 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break, and after 3 hours, you get a 15-minute break. And I have never been so productive in my entire life. I've always been a productive person, but not like this. So I am a recovering multitasker. So I used to be doing 15 million things at a time. And research shows it doesn't matter how productive you feel, you're simply not as productive when you're doing multiple things at a time. So what this enables me to do is to focus for 25 minutes on one thing. And so if you know anything about flow, this is where we get so into something that we lose track of time. And it's almost like reality feels bent. And so I am able to really focus and I get a lot of stuff done. One of the other things I'm going to do, and I'm going to do a shout out to Fit Style by Shayna here. So Shayna is a big proponent of fitting fitness into your life at any point in time, no matter what kind of life you have. And here's a great way that I do it. During my 5-minute breaks, I make sure that I walk up and down the stairs at least once and I drink some water. So my body was not built to sit in the same place for long periods of time. So every 25 minutes, I not only make sure that I make sure I get up and I move my body. And I also make sure that I sip water. So I can't say enough about the Pomodoro technique. There are all kinds of apps about the Pomodoro technique, but you don't need one. You could use a timer if you wanted to. It's a lot easier to have an app because it's got the built-in break times and all that sort of thing. But I can't say enough about this. This has revolutionized things for me. And then I told Giulia I'm going to do a little bit of a commercial at the end here. So I do want to thank Giulia for giving me this opportunity to talk about ways that people can make their life manageable by using apps. I'm really excited to be here and be on the show. As a reminder, the kind of people that I work with are people that need help with healthy boundaries, emotional resilience. They want to move from self-hate to self-love. They're spiritual seekers looking to increase their connection to their higher power, and people in 12-step recovery that want to bring their recovery to another level. I can help them. Just last night, I opened up registration for my webinar that's called Myths and Misconceptions About Boundaries. So it's my experience that people that don't have boundaries and are aware that they don't have them and want them think things like, if I have boundaries, I'll be able to control other people. No. That's not what boundaries are for. Boundaries are for you. And they're not about controlling other people. So I'm going to be talking about what does that mean and all that sort of thing. So I'm taking questions from people. So I've put the Rebrandly link right here on the screen. You can also go to my website, higherpowercoachingandconsulting.com, and you'll see this very same image on the page, and you can just click on that, and that takes you to the registration page. And there's a place in there where you can send me questions. You can also email me questions at barb@higherpowercoachingandconsulting.com. So I'll be answering questions on the webinar. And then if there's time, I'll also take questions live on the webinar. It really just depends on how many questions I get ahead of time. And I just wanted to put that up there larger for just a moment. And I think at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And so that I can see Giulia again. All right. So that was a lot.
That was a lot. And there was a couple of things. So one of our regulars, Rebecca, she had actually talked about, or had actually asked about Venmo being available for businesses. So I had posted up a couple of links that show where it says that Venmo is available for business. So it's venmo.com/business. And then it also gives a little bit more information as well. So there's articles.braintree payment.
Awesome.
Yeah. So there's that. And here is the venmo.com/business that's available as well. And I think
Awesome.
definitely one of the things that you had mentioned more explicitly for YNAB, you need a budget, is the help it provides. And for me, I think personally, when I look at apps, one of the things I definitely look at is how do they provide customer service and what does their help section look like? Are you able to speak a little bit about that as to when you're looking at apps, like how does that onboarding look like for you? And then like everybody kind of runs into a problem with an app. And I think the difference between utilizing an app for many years, like Lastpass, which I also used for many years, or the Google Suite, and dropping it and finding another app is just like what it's based on. I think part of it may be like, how does it get you out of that little,
So you broke up a lot there for me. So I am going to have to try to piece together what I think you asked me. Some of it had to do with the help. How do you get help from YNAB? Is that one of the questions? Like, how's their help function? How does that work? So in the beginning, I used their videos and I listened to the podcast and I did some of the webinars in the beginning, and I still get the email. I don't read it all the time that talks about all different things. But I also follow them on Instagram, and they're amazing in terms of answering people's questions on there. And they have support. They do, like, the common questions are answered in these weekly webinars, which are free, and they have them all the time. They have them at multiple, because they have them all across the country in all the different time zones, and they have them on a regular basis. My experience is that they are super helpful. And they also talk about things like, if you have student debt that you want to pay down, here are some strategies that you can use. And one of the ways that they do that is by profiling stories of clients of YNAB and how they did it and how they think about it. So they have their 4 rules, but there isn't one way to approach any problem financially. And it really has to do with, what are your values? Like, what do you value? And it's really like, if you listen to the beginning of the podcast and you hear the story of the guy, Jesse, who created the company, he and his wife had really strong values, which was, when they get married, they want her to stay home and take care of their children. They want to have a lot of children. That means they have to have their family surviving on his income. They also don't believe in racking up debt and all this sort of thing. So they were like, how do we live our lives around our values? Now, that they're not saying you should have those same values, but they're saying, if you really want to live your financial life around your values, then you're going to have to make some tough decisions, and they teach you how to make those decisions. So I hope I've answered that question. And now you're frozen on the screen to me.
Nope.
Oh, Rick says he loves YNAB. Okay. And there was something about the Google Suite, but I didn't quite catch what that question was.
Yeah, so the question was more about apps in general, and if what the help or the support is like for each of the apps, because that's always a big thing for me, if I keep an app or if I drop an app. So YNAB was a good example of that. Google has a good support kind of forum. And so, like, maybe what are some, what makes you keep an app? What makes you drop an app as it comes to that sort of
Yeah, to be honest with you, I talked about, I use the Tasks app and I used to use the To Do app and it sucked, so I just got rid of it. I didn't do any exploring. It's free. I don't care that much. I'm just going to find a new one. But if it was something like my Google suite of programs, and I've definitely done a lot of searching, like if I can't figure out how to do something or something weird starts happening, yeah, I feel like Google has tons of help stuff there. To be honest with you, I was going to say I don't think I've ever actually reached out for support from Google, but that's not true. I think it was archived a bunch of messages. No, I know what it was. I was reaching my limit with my Gmail, which I've had for, I don't know, 20 years or something like that. And I couldn't see where I had all of these messages that they're telling me that I have. And so the Google person was able to send me links to the places where all of these thousands of messages were. So that's the only time I can ever think of that I've reached out to them. But for me, because there's so many apps out there, I don't do a lot of investigating if they're not working for me. I just get a new one. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. All right, we are wrapping up. I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking about the apps that you found important. I know that we got a lot of comments about the apps that people use, and thanking you for introducing them to new apps. I find that it's always just really interesting to hear people's stories and how they utilize technology to help them out, because no matter how much you use technology, whether very little or a lot, it's always in people's lives. So the way that it can be helpful to people's lives and not harmful to people's lives, I think is always, a balance that we all have to really think about as we make decisions about technology in general. I just wanted to really quickly recap some of the things that are going on. Tomorrow there will be a pivot talk, so be sure to tune in for that. That's at 2 p.m. On Wednesday, and you can see all of the events that are coming up, and also archived past events at nhbknown.com/events. And I know at this point, both Barb and I have talked about the newly branded Connection Corner, where Barb is the host, and she is going to be talking with Amy Smith from the VR Game Truck of New England. So that's coming up on Thursday, and that's at 10 a.m. I am here every Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. I know that we each met Amy at different times, I think. And I met Amy, she was probably one of the first people I met at the CT New networking event that's specifically for CT New, which is networking for entrepreneurial women. We have a lot of mutual friends from there.
Yeah.
And
actually, I want to tell you about, I have this little mini fantasy that someday Amy's going to bring her truck and park it on Orange Street on the block where Elm City Games and Barcade are, and the city's going to close off that street, and it's going to be just a big giant game fest. That's a fantasy that I have. And so I'm putting it out into the universe. So if there's anybody who thinks that that's a really great fantasy and wants to help me make that come true, to contact me, because I just think that would be so cool.
Yeah, and there's actually been a lot of action on that side of Orange Street as well, from the restaurants, and then Elm City Games having their gaming tables out, and trying to figure out how to get that organized and that sort of thing. So it's really quite nice to have all of these kind of block parties safely distanced and masked. Yeah. So next week, where was I? Next week on Digital Media Sync, my guest is going to be Chris Tonsky from Fusion Design. And you guys know that I've had Chris on before. She is a WordPress wizard, and she also works with e-commerce sites and restaurant sites as well. So she's going to be talking about utilizing WordPress, WooCommerce, and Stripe. So this is quite common for small businesses and for larger businesses as well. But as more retail needs to be in the online space, at least for the next, several months, couple of years, and ongoing, this is going to be really important. And the other thing too, just really quickly, if anybody else is thinking about a topic that they want to talk about, definitely drop me a note, either in the Digital Media Sync group on Facebook. I'll also put really quickly my social maven at agentsofbranding.com, my email address. So I'll put that on here.
Giulia, I do want to give another plug for Digital Media Sync. So I mentioned that I just opened up registration for my webinar that's coming up on the 28th. It's the first time that I'm going to be doing a webinar. And I want to tell folks, I went, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, I binge watched a whole slew of episodes of Digital Media Sync. So including the 2 episodes with Zeph Zahn about why live video is really important for business leaders. And then a whole bunch of episodes that you did about how to host virtual events. I cannot tell you how helpful those episodes were. So if you're really doing any kind of business online and you haven't watched previous episodes of Digital Media Sync, I absolutely encourage you to do it, because there are so many gems in there. And I feel like I'm capable now of doing this from watching your videos. I mean, I'm a relatively tech savvy person, but I don't think you need to be all that tech savvy, because you like, she gives you checklists and stuff too. I mean, it was just so helpful. So this is such a great show. You give concrete help to people, and I love that.
Yeah, I think I've always, wanted to give very concise, precise information to people. I had mentioned earlier that I've been doing this for 10 years, and now I'm actually putting modules together, much like the one that you're talking about, because people want to learn how to do virtual events from the perspective of not just how do you host one, but looking at the technology, and not just looking at the technology, but really, why do you need or want the technology? And then kind of checking the boxes there before getting too confused or overwhelmed. It's like, no, just answer these simple questions and then go into like, this is the thing that's going to work for me. And I think that's what it is. Even with my clients, it's always kind of like that, like, this is overwhelming. It's just like, just take a deep breath. What's the core question that you need to ask? Go from there.
Right.
So really trying to take it from that perspective, and that's definitely going to be one of the modules and one of the elements that I'm going to be moving forward with. You'll see on Known, the Facebook page, LinkedIn and Instagram, and also on Digital Media Sync, LinkedIn and Facebook, that I've been talking about this new program that's going to be rolling out. Once it does drop, we're going to be talking about it. It's going to be in the newsletter, the Known newsletter, pretty soon as well. So Barb, I know that you put that together, so I'll let you know that's coming up. Yeah, so it's all very exciting stuff. So again, Barb, thank you so much. That was super helpful. I love how you framed, how you got to the decisions that you made to utilize these apps. And that was just a really great show. So I'm going to sign off.
All right. Well, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Cool. Yay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.